Hey everyone, welcome back to Mr. Cursed. Today's video is going to be intense. I've got 6 true horror stories from small towns in Canada that will seriously creep you out. Trust me, after hearing these, you'll never look at quiet little towns the same way again. But real quick, before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and smash the like. Also, share this with your friends if you dare. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you guys. All right, let's get into these chilling stories. You ready? Let's go. I was 41 years old when I started making house calls to Marrow Creek, Saskatchewan. I'm a veterinarian, was running a clinic in Regina that was barely staying afloat. My wife had left 6 months earlier, took the kids with her, and I was drowning in debt. So when I got a call from a farmer named Henderson offering me $500 cash to drive out and look at his cow, I didn't ask many questions. $500 for a house call was insane money, but he said it required discretion and expertise. I figured maybe it was some illegal breeding situation or something he didn't want reported. I needed the money bad enough that I didn't care. The drive out to Marrow Creek took about 2 hours. It's one of those tiny farming communities, population maybe 1,450, that looks exactly like every other prairie town. Grain elevators, a co-op store, a hockey rink, houses spread out with fields between them. Nothing unusual about it at first glance. But I noticed something weird as I got closer. No birds. I'm driving through farmland in late spring, and I didn't see a single bird flying anywhere near the town. Not one. And when I checked my GPS about a mile from the town limits, it started spinning. Just completely lost signal. My phone's compass app went crazy, spinning in circles. I had to navigate the last bit using actual road signs. Henderson's farm was on the east side of town. He met me in his driveway. Older guy, maybe 65, wearing clean overalls and a friendly smile. Paid me the $500 in cash right there. Old bills that felt slightly damp and had serial numbers I'd never seen before. Some of the 20s had faces on them that looked wrong somehow, like the eyes were watching me. I remember thinking that was strange, but I was too focused on the money to really process it. "She's in the barn," Henderson said. "Fair warning, Doc. What you're about to say, just keep an open mind." I've been a vet for almost 20 years. I've seen birth defects. I've seen animals injured in horrible ways. I thought I was prepared for anything. I wasn't prepared for what was in that barn. The cow was standing in a stall, eating hay. She looked completely calm and healthy, except her organs were on the outside of her body. Not like she'd been torn open. I mean her stomach, her intestines, parts of her lungs, they were just there, exposed, hanging on the outside of her ribcage. But they were functioning. I could see her stomach digesting, see her heart beating through the translucent tissue. She had no open wounds. It was like she'd been turned inside out, but somehow everything still worked perfectly. I stood there for a long time, just staring. Henderson waited patiently. "How long has she been like this?" I finally asked. "About 3 weeks. She's producing milk just fine, eating normal. I just want to make sure she stays healthy." He didn't say fix her. He said, keep her healthy. Like this was just a management issue. I did the examination in a daze. Her vital signs were perfect. Better than perfect, actually. Her heart rate was steady, temperature normal, breathing easy. By every measure I had, this cow was thriving. "What do you feed them?" I asked. "Special supplements," Henderson said. "Whole town uses them. You can pick some up at the co-op if you're curious." I ended up making that drive to Marrow Creek 3 or 4 times a week for the next month. Every farm had animals with impossible anatomies. I treated chickens that had grown rows of teeth like sharks, pigs with human-like hands growing from their shoulders, horses with legs that had too many joints, bending in directions that should have been impossible. And every single farmer treated these mutations like normal problems. Could I help keep the chicken's teeth from getting infected? Could I check if the pig's hand growths were causing pain? Could I wrap the horse's extra joints so it could work better? The money was incredible. I was making more in a week than I used to make in a month. I was catching up on my debts, starting to breathe again financially. And honestly, the animals didn't seem to be suffering. If anything, they were healthier than normal livestock. But the town itself felt wrong in ways I couldn't explain. The air had this metallic taste, especially near the farms. It felt thick when you breathed, like you were inhaling soup. Sounds traveled wrong. I'd hear conversations clearly from miles away, but sometimes I couldn't hear Henderson when he was standing right next to me. The light was weird too, kind of yellowish and dim even at noon. I got curious about those feed supplements. Stopped by the co-op one afternoon and asked to see what they were selling. The clerk, a woman named Sarah, showed me to the back room. The supplements came in unmarked bags. When she opened one, I saw crystalline structures that seemed to move on their own. There were powders that made a whispering sound when she poured them, seeds that had tiny black spots that looked disturbingly like eyes. "Where does this come from?" I asked. "We grow it local," Sarah said, "in the silos." I'd seen the grain silos on the edge of town, big concrete structures, 6 of them in a row. I'd noticed they hummed at night. Not like machinery, more like singing, if singing could have a physical presence you felt in your chest. The farmers paid me in those strange bills every time. I started checking the serial numbers online. They didn't exist in any database. Some of the coins they gave me had faces on them that I swear moved when I wasn't looking directly at them. There were rules, I learned. Don't work past midnight. Never follow any animals if they head toward the woods. Ignore anything you hear from the grain silos. And never ever ask to see what Henderson kept in his other barn, the big one out past the fields. I broke that last rule 6 weeks in. I'd been treating a calf on Henderson's property when I saw something walk from the big barn to the house. It moved wrong. Too many legs, arranged in a circle. I caught just a glimpse before it disappeared. That night, I came back. I shouldn't have. I knew I shouldn't have, but I needed to understand what was happening in Marrow Creek. The barn wasn't locked. Inside, I found something that made every other mutation I'd seen look normal by comparison. It was huge, taking up the entire interior of the barn, part plant, part animal, part something else entirely. It had 1,000 different textures, bark, fur, scales, skin, things I didn't have names for. And spreading out from it, invisible except for this faint shimmer in the air, were threads connecting to everything. Every mutated animal in Marrow Creek was connected to this thing. It was female. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. And it was pregnant. I could see movement inside it, thousands of different shapes, different species, all growing simultaneously. I found records in Henderson's office later that night. The thing had crashed here in 1973. Not a meteorite, something biological. It had burrowed into the groundwater and infected everything. The farmers had figured out how to work with it. They bred the mutations intentionally, using the creatures the thing produced to improve their livestock. The charts showed a progression going back 50 years, traits being refined and strengthened with each generation. The mutations weren't random. They were intentional, designed, and they were spreading. I found shipping records showing organs being harvested and sold to pharmaceutical companies who thought they were getting specialty cultures. I found breeding logs showing animals being transported to farms in Alberta and Manitoba. Within 10 years, the record suggested there wouldn't be any normal animals left in this part of Saskatchewan. I should have left then. Should have run and never come back. But I'd been breathing that thick air for weeks, drinking the water. My body was changing, too. My bones started feeling lighter, hollow like a bird's. My fingernails hardened into something like keratin claws. And worst of all, I could understand what the animals were thinking. Not like hearing words, more like feeling their intentions, their awareness. The mutated ones were smarter than they should be. They knew they were changing, and they were okay with it. The breaking point came during harvest season. I watched farmers cut organs from living animals, not killing them, just harvesting renewable tissue while the creatures stood calmly. They shipped these organs out in refrigerated trucks. One farmer explained to me that some of the older residents had volunteered to be absorbed by the thing in Henderson's barn. They believed it granted immortality through biological integration. I saw what he meant a week later. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the library, walked into the barn one morning. I watched through the window as the organism opened like a flower and she stepped inside. She didn't scream. She looked peaceful. And I could swear I saw her face appear on the organism's surface later, still conscious, still aware, but now part of something larger. That's when the thing started talking to me, not out loud, through the animals. When I was treating a horse, it would speak using the horse's mouth, but in a voice made of hundreds of different tones at once. It was hiding, it told me, running from something that hunted it across dimensions. The mutations weren't evolution. They were camouflage. It was trying to blend in, to make itself and everything it touched unrecognizable as the thing it used to be. Something was coming for it. Something that consumed anything it recognized as prey. The organism was offering a deal to Marrow Creek: symbiosis, complete integration, humans and animals becoming one species, so alien that the pursuer wouldn't recognize us as target. Yes. I watched Farmer Thompson volunteer to be the test case. Over 3 days, he merged with his cattle. His body opened up and flowed into theirs, and theirs into his. By the end, there was a single organism with Thompson's consciousness, but the combined mass and abilities of 20 cows. He could still talk. He said he could photosynthesize now, said he could see colors that didn't exist before. The children of Marrow Creek were changing fastest. They'd grown up eating the mutated meat. Their bodies had extra rows of teeth. They could digest anything. Their bones were denser, their eyes reflected light at night. They were already halfway to being something new. I had to make a choice. My ex-wife came looking for me eventually, worried because I'd stopped answering calls. She drove into town with our kids, found me at Henderson's farm. She saw what I'd become. My skin had this translucent quality now, my bones visible through it in places. I was growing something like small branches from my spine. But the kids ran to me. They weren't afraid. They could smell the change in me, and they wanted it too. They felt it calling to them. That's when the sky broke open. I don't have better words for it. The sky cracked like an egg, and something vast pushed through. It was made of hunger, made of recognition. It saw things, identified them, and consumed them. I watched it eat a deer at the edge of town. The deer just ceased to exist, atoms separated and absorbed. But it passed over Marrow Creek, moved right past us without seeing us. Because nothing in Marrow Creek registered as Earth life anymore. We'd become too alien for even aliens to recognize. The organism had saved us by making us into something unrecognizable. Other towns started calling after that. Other farming communities in Saskatchewan and Alberta. They'd heard about Marrow Creek's productivity, its disease-resistant, livestock. They wanted the feed supplements. The organism's influence started spreading through agricultural supply networks. I'm still in Marrow Creek, still practicing veterinary medicine, though I'm not sure what I'm treating anymore. The organisms here don't have names or classifications. They exist partially in dimensions I can sense but not fully perceive. My kids visit once a month. They're changing too, slowly, from proximity. Their teeth are growing in strange patterns. Their skin is starting to show that translucent quality. But it's controlled, gradual. They can still exist in both worlds, the normal one and this new thing we're becoming. I keep records of everything, document every stage of change. Scientists will never believe it, but I write it down anyway. Evidence of evolution happening not through natural selection but through conscious choice. Marrow Creek still exports food. The shipping trucks go out every week. But now we're feeding the other transformed communities spreading across Canada. The organism explained it to me one night, speaking through a horse with too many eyes. That thing that came through the sky, it's not gone. It's still hunting, still consuming worlds full of recognizable prey. We're preparing, changing our species into something that can survive by being unrecognizable. The organism isn't our enemy. It's trying to save us. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if what we're becoming is still human enough to matter. But I know that every breath I take in Marrow Creek now carries transformation particles. The change isn't optional anymore. It's already started, spreading through the food supply, through the water, through the air. Sometimes I wonder if I should have run when I had the chance, taken my kids far away and let them stay human. But I remember that thing in the sky, that hunger that consumed everything it recognized. And I think maybe being unrecognizable is the only way to survive what's coming. I'm still a veterinarian. That hasn't changed. I still care for animals, still try to keep them healthy. They're just not animals anymore. Neither am I. Looking back now, I still don't know if Henderson was protecting us or condemning us. The money stopped mattering after the first month. By then, I was too changed to leave, even if I wanted to. I don't talk about this much. People outside Marrow Creek wouldn't understand. Hell, I'm not sure I understand it myself. I just know that every morning I wake up a little less human, a little more something else, and I'm not sure which one is supposed to survive. I'm 58 years old and work as a grocery store manager in Winnipeg. Never thought I'd be the kind of person telling stories like this, but some things you can't just keep to yourself. This happened about 6 months ago, and honestly, I'm still trying to make sense of it all. I drove down to this little place called Crimson Valley, Manitoba, population 1,670 according to the welcome sign, to visit my brother Tom. We hadn't spoken in 2 years over some stupid argument about our parents' inheritance, but he was the only family I had left. Tom had moved there after his divorce, said he needed a fresh start. When I pulled into town, the place looked like something off a Canadian postcard. Heritage buildings, friendly locals waving from their porches, the kind of small-town charm you don't see much anymore. Everyone I talked to knew Tom and said he was contributing beautifully to the community. Made me feel good, like maybe my brother had finally found his place. But when I saw Tom, I almost didn't recognize him. My 61-year-old brother looked like he was 45. I'm not exaggerating. The guy was muscled, energetic, had a full head of hair when he'd been going bald for years. He laughed when I mentioned it, said it was the clean living and community support. Said Crimson Valley had this amazing medical facility, more advanced than anything in Winnipeg, and they gave free treatments to everyone. The first thing that struck me wrong was the smell. Underneath the fresh bread from the bakery and the pine trees, there was something else, metallic and sweet, like pennies soaked in maple syrup. I kept sniffing the air, trying to place it, but Tom just said it was the iron-rich soil in the area. That first night, they had this community potluck dinner. Tom insisted I come, said it was important to meet everyone. The weird thing was, every single dish was iron-rich food. Old sausage, liver and onions, steaks so rare they were practically raw, and everyone watched me eat with this intense interest, like they were studying how I chewed or something. I tried to make conversation, but they kept asking about my health, my energy levels, if I'd been feeling tired lately. During dinner, I met 12 Indigenous youth who were supposedly doing community service there. They were from Northern Reserves, Tom explained, part of some job training program. But these kids looked drained, pale, quiet, barely touched their food. When I tried talking to one of them, a kid named Marcus, who couldn't have been more than 19, he just stared at his plate and mumbled one-word answers. Tom kept pushing me to get a free health screening the next morning. Said it was Crimson Valley's hospitality tradition, that everyone who visited got one. The way he talked about it, you'd think it was like getting a mint on your hotel pillow. I should have left right then. Looking back now, every instinct I had was screaming at me to get in my car and drive back to Winnipeg. But Tom was my brother, and I'd driven 4 hours to reconcile with him. So I said yes. The medical facility was impressive, I'll give them that. State-of-the-art equipment, doctors with credentials from universities I'd actually heard of. They took me into this clean white room, said they just needed some blood work to check my iron levels. The moment that needle went into my arm, my vision went black. I woke up 6 hours later with Tom sitting beside my bed, telling me I'd fainted from low iron. But I felt wrong, weak in a way I'd never experienced before. When I got to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, I counted 17 puncture marks on my body. 17. Not just the one from the blood draw. My phone was dead even though it had been fully charged that morning. Tom kept offering me these suppas, Plymouths that smelled like rust and tasted worse. Said they'd help with my iron deficiency. I pretended to take them but spit them out when he wasn't looking. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something was pulling at me to get up and walk around town. I followed one of those indigenous kids, Marcus, to this locked building on the edge of town. Through the windows, I could see dozens of beds with IV stands next to them, medical equipment everywhere, and refrigerated units full of blood bags. That's when it hit me. Crimson Valley wasn't just some quaint little town. They were farming blood from these kids, telling the reserves their children were getting job training while they slowly drained them. I went back to Tom's house and started looking through his papers while he was asleep, found shipping manifests, invoices, medical records. They were selling blood to private clinics across North America, $10,000 per pint for youth-enriched plasma. The federal Indian agent was getting kickbacks, marking these kids as employed while they were being systematically harvested. But it was worse than just blood. These seniors weren't just getting transfusions, they were getting full plasma replacements, bone marrow transplants, even temporary organ borrowing from the youth. Tom had received a kidney, part of a liver, and weekly plasma from Marcus specifically. My brother was wearing a 19-year-old's organs in his 61-year-old body. The next day, during another tour of the facility, Marcus grabbed my hand when Tom wasn't looking, pressed a flash drive into my palm and whispered, "Ottawa Journalist," before Tom pulled me away. That drive contained 18 months of documentation. Photos, videos, audio recordings of town meetings where they discussed harvest quotas and product quality like they were talking about corn crops. They were keeping the kids compliant with a drug cocktail that made them docile but kept their blood clean. Indigenous herbs mixed with pharmaceutical sedatives. Each senior gained about 5 years of youth per kid they drained, but those kids lost 20 years of life expectancy from the repeated harvesting. The worst part? They were forcing some of the youth to reproduce, creating a sustainable supply of donors, babies marked for future harvesting from birth. I also found out what happened to kids who couldn't produce anymore. They called it relocation, but really they were cremated in the facility's basement. Ashes scattered in the Manitoba wilderness like they'd never existed. When Tom realized I'd discovered everything, the town called an emergency meeting. 400 residents voting on whether to process me or recruit me. During the meeting, this elderly Indigenous woman showed up looking for her 5 grandchildren who'd been employed in Crimson Valley. The town tried to buy her silence, but she'd already contacted tribal police. That's when Dr. Patterson, the head of the facility, explained the science to me. Indigenous youth had specific genetic markers that made their blood more adaptable for anti-aging treatments. Modern vampirism, he called it, like he was proud of the term. Tom begged me to try one treatment, said I'd understand then. They forcibly gave me a plasma infusion from Marcus, and immediately I felt 20 years younger. My arthritis disappeared, my vision cleared, energy surged through my body like electricity, but I also felt this instant craving for more. Could feel myself aging without it. The town voted 389-11 to make me disappear. Tom abstained. They locked down all the exits, armed residents with tranquilizer guns, treated it like a community hunt. That's when Marcus, despite being drained nearly to death, set fire to the blood storage facility, destroyed millions of dollars worth of product, and created enough chaos for the elder to get me and 3 other kids to her truck. Tom tried to stop us, collapsed trying to chase the truck, aging 50 years us, in minutes. I watched my brother die in my arms while he begged for just one more treatment. I uploaded everything to CBC, APTN, and international media while we raced toward Winnipeg. The story exploded globally within hours. Military and police descended on Crimson Valley, finding 47 Indigenous youth in various stages of blood harvesting. Without the blood money, the town economically imploded within days. Residents aged rapidly as the stolen youth left their bodies. The investigation revealed 16 similar towns across rural Canada, all targeting Indigenous communities. I still crave those treatments. Wake up measuring my wrinkles, checking my arthritis. Sometimes I dream about going back for just one more infusion. We're all addicted now, the survivors and me. Our bodies corrupted by what they did to us. 3 witnesses have died mysteriously since the inquiry started. I get daily threats from billionaires who want their supply back. Sometimes I drive by where Crimson Valley used to be, and I swear I see lights in that medical facility. They say it's being rebuilt under new management. The demand never stopped. It just went deeper underground. I was 29, working as a substitute teacher around Calgary when I got that emergency call about Willowbrook Elementary. The district made it sound like a dream gig. 3 months guaranteed, housing included, double the normal pay. What they didn't mention on that phone call was that I'd be replacing the 9th teacher to disappear from that school in less than a year. I was pretty desperate at the time, honestly. Just lost my apartment, had about $60,000 in student loans hanging over my head, and I'd been sleeping in my Honda Civic for 2 weeks. The recruiter said Willowbrook was a small town, population around 2,100, way out in rural Alberta, but the pay was too good to pass up. They needed someone immediately, and I needed the money immediately. Seemed like fate. The drive out there took about 4 hours, mostly through empty highway and farmland. About halfway there, I started noticing something weird. Missing person posters. Not just 1 or 2, but 6 different ones stapled to telephone poles along the main road into town. All young women. All teachers based on their photos. You know that look, professional headshots with the forced smile. Sarah Mitchell, 26. Emily Rodriguez, 24. Jennifer Walsh, 28. Names I'd remember forever after what happened. Willowbrook Elementary sat right in the center of town, and I have to say, my first impression was pretty positive. The building looked almost new, fresh paint, modern playground equipment, perfectly maintained grounds. For a town this small and remote, someone was clearly investing serious money in the school. The principal, Mrs. Henderson, met me at the front entrance. She was maybe 70, gray hair pulled back tight, wearing this floral dress that looked like it came from the 1950s. Pleasant enough woman, but something felt off during our meeting. She never blinked. Not once in that entire 30-minute conversation. And her perfume couldn't quite cover this strange chemical smell, like formaldehyde. She handed me a thick binder of lesson plans and teaching protocols. "Follow these exactly," she said, tapping the cover with one finger. "Our students are very special. They require specific methods." The way she said specific made my skin crawl. But I needed this job. My housing was in the school basement, basically a small apartment with a kitchenette, bedroom, and bathroom. No windows, which was weird, and the locks only worked from the outside, which was weirder. When I asked about it, Mrs. Henderson just smiled and said it was for security. The previous teacher's belongings were still there, purse on the counter, toothbrush by the sink, half-eaten yogurt in the fridge. Emily Rodriguez, according to the ID in the purse. I asked when she'd be coming back for her things. Mrs. Henderson's smile got wider. "Oh, she won't be needing them anymore." My first day teaching was unlike anything I'd experienced in 10 years of substitute work. 48 students, grades 1 through 6, all in perfect rows. They sat with their hands folded, backs straight, staring ahead with these blank expressions. When I introduced myself, they responded in perfect unison. "Good morning, Miss Thompson." Not a single voice out of sync. Not one kid fidgeting or whispering or looking around. They moved like they shared one brain. The curriculum was bizarre. Math problems about resource distribution and optimal harvest timing. Reading comprehension based on stories about communities making sacrifices for the greater good. Science lessons focused entirely on biological preservation and tissue regeneration. When I questioned some of the content, Mrs. Henderson appeared in my doorway like she'd been listening. "Follow the protocols exactly," she repeated, still not blinking. Every morning at exactly 8:15, all 48 students would stand up, turn to face east, and hum a single, low note for 3 minutes. Just stand there humming in perfect harmony while I watched, feeling my teeth ache from the vibration. When I asked what it was for, little Lucy in the front row, the only student who ever seemed remotely normal, whispered, "We're checking in." Checking in with who? I whispered back. She looked terrified. With what's downstairs? That night, exploring my basement apartment, I found Emily Rodriguez's journal hidden behind the water heater. The entries started normal enough. Excited about the new position, impressed by the students' behavior, grateful for the good pay. But within weeks, the tone changed completely. Emily wrote about students who knew things they shouldn't know, and parents who all looked related even though they had different last names. Her final entries were increasingly frantic. Something's growing under the school. I can hear it at night. The children aren't children, they're feeding it information about me. I started paying closer attention to the students after that. They learned impossibly fast. Concepts that should take weeks to master, they'd understand in minutes. Every test score was perfect, every assignment flawless. But I never saw a single child smile, laugh, or show any emotion at all. During recess, instead of playing, they'd stand in perfect circles, passing something between them. From my classroom window, it looked like raw meat, wet and pulsing. The parents were even stranger. Every single one had the same bone structure, high cheekbones, wide-set eyes, the same way of tilting their heads when they listened. Different last names, but they could have been siblings. During parent conferences, they asked me the weirdest questions, not about their children's progress, but about my family history, my blood type, my medical conditions. They scored my answers on little clipboards like I was taking some kind of test. After 2 weeks in Willowbrook, I started getting sick, losing hair in clumps, in the shower. My fingernails became brittle and started peeling off. My teeth felt loose in my gums. When I looked in the mirror, I swear I'd aged 5 years. I called in sick one day and drove to the nearest town with a clinic. The doctor ran some tests and said my blood work was highly unusual, like my body was being drained of essential nutrients, but he couldn't explain why. That's when I started exploring the restricted areas of the school. Using Emily's key card that was still in her purse, I got into the lower basement levels. What I found down there still gives me nightmares. 9 identical classroom setups, each one exactly like mine. Teacher belongings scattered around, purses, coffee mugs, lesson planners. But no teachers. Just empty rooms that smelled like meat and chemicals. The deepest level was the worst. A massive chamber carved out of rock with something growing in the center. At first I thought it was some kind of industrial equipment, tubes and cables running everywhere, electrical humming that vibrated through the floor. But when I got closer with my flashlight, I realized it was biological. A huge brain-like organism, gray and pulsing, covered in veins that pumped dark fluid. And in the surface, just under the translucent skin, I could see faces, human faces, eyes open, mouths moving silently. Emily was there, and Sarah, and Jennifer. All the missing teachers, conscious and aware, trapped inside this thing. That's when I heard the footsteps on the stairs behind me. All 48 students, moving in perfect synchronization, coming down to find me. But instead of looking like children, their faces were shifting, features rearranging themselves, becoming more angular and predatory. When they spoke, it was in unison, but with Emily's voice. "You're almost ready," they said. "Just a few more days of preparation and you can join us. We've learned so much from the others. Teaching methods, childhood development, ways to make more children trust us. You have knowledge we need about substitute teacher networks, how to recruit, temporaries who won't be missed." I ran, pushed through them and sprinted up those basement stairs. But every exit led back to the basement. Every door I opened, every hallway I turned down, somehow I kept ending up back in that chamber with the thing that had been feeding on teachers for God knows how long. The building itself was wrong. Geometry that didn't make sense, designed to trap people inside. Little Lucy found me collapsed in a supply closet, hyperventilating. She looked different, older somehow, like pieces of other people were showing through her child face. "I can help you," she whispered, "but not for long. I'm made from 12 different teachers, Emily, Sarah, and 10 others before them. Part of me wants to save you, but most of me wants to feed you to it." She led me to the chemistry lab and helped me gather supplies. "Thermite," she said. burn hot enough to hurt it, maybe give me time to escape while it was distracted. As we mixed the chemicals, I could feel something changing in my body. My skin was starting to stick to surfaces when I touched them too long, like I was becoming part of the building itself. Lucy aged 10 years while we worked, the teacher memories inside her fighting against her programming. "It's rushing your absorption," she gasped, now looking middle-aged. "Investigators are coming. It needs to finish and split before they arrive." I dumped the thermite mixture down through a ventilation grate that led to the main chamber. The explosion shook the entire school, and something below started screaming, not with a human voice, but with the sound of tearing metal and breaking glass. Every student in the building collapsed at once, some dissolving into biological matter, others becoming empty shells that just stared at nothing. That's when the parents showed up. But they weren't moving like humans anymore, running on all fours, their faces sliding off to reveal smooth flesh underneath, too many limbs sprouting from their backs and sides. I started live streaming on my phone, showing everything, the dissolved students, the parent things, the smoke pouring from the basement. Posted it everywhere I could before they could stop me. Canadian forces showed up within hours. Biohazard teams in full gear found me catatonic at the town limits, clutching my phone. The school was already collapsing into organic sludge by then. Later, they told me 17 similar schools across Canada had simultaneously suffered structural failures that same day. Thousands of students just vanished. Official report blamed a gas leak explosion. I spent 8 months in psychiatric care, recovering memories, learning to write again with my left hand since my right was too damaged from whatever had been growing under my skin. They said I'd suffered severe malnutrition and possible chemical exposure. I never told them the whole truth. Who would believe it? I still work as a substitute teacher, but I can feel them now, the infected schools. They're more careful now, evolved, learned from Willowbrook's mistakes. And they specifically request me because I'm already partially connected to their network. I've turned down jobs in 3 different provinces after getting that familiar feeling walking into the building. Sometimes I dream about Emily and the others, still conscious inside that thing, still teaching lessons to students that aren't really students. And sometimes, when I'm in a new school for the first time, I'll catch a student staring at me with Lucy's eyes, and I know they're testing me again, seeing if I'm ready to become number 10. I keep that live stream backed up in 12 different places. Not because I think anyone will believe it, but because someday, when they perfect their methods, someone's going to need to know what to look for. The signs are always the same. Perfect students, identical parents, and basement apartments with locks that only work from the outside. Looking back now, I still wake up, some nights feeling like I'm suffocating, like something's trying to absorb me through my mattress. And I never eat rare meat anymore. Can't handle the smell. I was 35 when I lost my job to one of those self-checkout machines at the Toronto convenience store where I'd worked for 8 years. My daughter Emma was diabetic, insulin cost a fortune, and I was facing eviction when I saw this Craigslist ad that seemed too good to be true. Night shift cashier wanted, $30 hour cash, Nowhere, Ontario. I figured it was a scam, but when you're desperate, you call anyway. The guy who answered sounded normal enough. Said they needed someone reliable for the graveyard shift at the last store. Apparently that was the actual name. Nowhere was a real place too, he said. Population 666, right on Highway 17 between Thunder Bay and Sault Ste. Marie. 8 hours from anything that mattered. He offered to pay my first week up front if I could start immediately. I should have asked more questions. The drive up took me through endless forests and past communities that looked like they'd been abandoned for decades. When I finally reached Nowhere, it was exactly what you'd expect. 30 houses, a general store that doubled as a gas station, and nothing else. The last store sat at the only intersection, a squat concrete building with fluorescent lights that hummed too loud and flickered like they were about to die. The day manager, Carol, showed me around before her shift ended. The place was weird from the start. Half grocery store, half gas station, half everything else, which doesn't make mathematical sense, but that's how it felt. The shelves held products from different decades. I saw cereal boxes with designs from the 1950s sitting next to energy drinks that looked futuristic. Some prices were marked in Canadian dollars, others in currencies I didn't recognize. "Just ring up whatever they want to buy," Carol said, handing me a key ring with about 20 keys on it. "Register takes any payment. Don't ask questions about where folks come from or where they're going. And never ever leave the counter during your shift." She left me with a list of rules written in different handwritings, like multiple people had added to it over the years. Work alone from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Serve anyone who enters. Never refuse a sale. Never ask where customers come from. Never leave the counter. At the bottom, someone had scrawled, "The store keeps the roads open." My first customer arrived at exactly midnight. A man in what looked like a 1940s military uniform walked in and asked for cigarettes. I pointed to the display behind me, but he shook his head and said he needed Lucky Strikes. We didn't carry those. I told him so. But when I turned around to show him our brands, there was a pack of Lucky Strikes sitting on the shelf. The package looked old, like it had been sitting there for decades. He paid with bills that had the wrong Queen Elizabeth on them. The register accepted the money without a problem. When I opened the till later, the bills looked normal. Canadian 20s with the current design. The next customer wanted milk for her baby. We didn't sell baby formula, but when I walked her to the dairy section, there it was. Vintage packaging from the 1960s, but the expiration date was current. She paid with coins that felt too heavy and made a sound like wind chimes when they hit the counter. By 3 a.m., I'd served a dozen customers who shouldn't have existed. People in clothes from different eras, buying products that appeared on our shelves just for them. The register accepted everything. Bottle caps, what looked like teeth, folded paper with numbers written on it. Everything turned into legitimate Canadian currency in the till. The store itself started changing. I'd glance at the aisles and they'd be longer than they should be, extending beyond where the back wall was supposed to be. The smell changed for each custom. Mirror 2. Pine needles for a woman in hiking gear from what looked like the 1980s. Ocean salt for a man in a sailor's uniform. Burning metal for someone I couldn't quite see clearly. I called my daughter during a quiet moment around 4 a.m. The call went through, but she sounded strange, older. When I asked if she was okay, she said, "Dad, I'm 45. You've been gone for 10 years. I hung up and called right back. This time she answered normally, sounding like the 15-year-old she was supposed to be. After a week, I started recognizing some customers. Not just repeat buyers, but people I'd seen in newspaper obituaries from the gas station's bulletin board. People who'd died in car accidents on Highway 17 over the decades. They'd come in, buy something specific, and leave through the front door into darkness that seemed deeper than it should be. I found employee records in the back office. Hundreds of night cashiers since 1950. Every single one worked exactly 1 year before being transferred to other location. None of the locations listed existed. The security monitors showed things that couldn't be right. Sometimes my reflection looked 20 years old, sometimes 80. The cameras picked up customers I couldn't see with my eyes and missed customers who were standing right in front of me. One night I checked the transaction records. The register was recording impossible sales. Hope, 1 unit, $47.83. Thursday, June 1987, $3.50. Mother's voice, sample size, $99.99. An elderly indigenous woman came in during my third week. She bought nothing, just stood near the counter and watched me work. "This is a thin place," she finally said, "where different times touch. My ancestors avoided this spot. The government knew when they built the highway." She left me with sage and instructions to burn it if things got too bad. Things got bad. Customers started arriving from futures that hadn't happened yet. A woman bought insulin for her diabetic daughter, insulin that cured the disease instead of just managing it. She paid with money dated 2045. Another Walsh. Our man bought lottery tickets for drawings that wouldn't happen for 30 years. I started keeping some of that future insulin for Emma. Every time I brought it home, she got better. Not just managed better, actually better, but I was changing too. My left hand started aging faster than my right. Gray patches appeared in my hair overnight, then disappeared. I'd look in mirrors and see myself at different ages. The worst part was the missing hour. Every night from 3:33 to 4:33 a.m., time worked differently. Sometimes I'd serve hundreds of customers in what felt like seconds. Other times, one customer would browse for what felt like days. I'd watch the clock tick 3:32, then 4:34, with no memory of what happened in between. During my fourth week, a customer walked in who looked exactly like me, but 20 years older. He bought a lottery ticket and winked. "You'll need this in 2045, he said, and walked out through a door that led to a forest that hadn't been there moments before. The next night, my daughter walked in. Not the 15-year-old Emma, but a 45-year-old version of her. She was crying. "Dad, please quit before the anniversary," she begged. "I've been looking for you for 20 years. The store takes one cashier every year. They become customers, buying things that trap them." I tried to touch her, but my hand passed right through. That's when I understood. The last store wasn't just serving the town of nowhere. It was serving Highway 17 itself. The road cut through temporal anomalies that had existed for centuries. Indigenous peoples had trading routes here because they knew about the thin places where different times touched. The store was an anchor point, keeping reality stable for hundreds of kilometers in each direction. Night cashiers weren't just selling products. We were conducting transactions across time, maintaining commerce between different chiefs, such temporal states. But the store needed to consume one cashier each year to maintain its stability. We'd eventually become customers ourselves, buying something that would trap us in its temporal web. I found the previous cashiers working in the back room, aging one day per year, stocking shelves in slow motion, unable to leave. They moved like people underwater, aware but unable to speak or escape. During my last week, corporate visited. The district manager existed in multiple timelines simultaneously, sometimes from 1973, sometimes from 2047. He checked my temporal sales metrics and offered me a promotion. Permanent night manager, existing across all timelines, never aging, but never leaving. Instead of accepting or quitting, I started sabotaging. I deliberately sold wrong items to customers, gave them products that would destabilize their temporal states instead of anchoring them. The store started experiencing timeline bleeding. Multiple versions of the same customers existed simultaneously, creating impossible transactions. Corporate sent fixers from different timelines, but they couldn't coordinate across their temporal states. The chaos grew worse. The indigenous elder returned with traditional medicine. "We managed these anomalies for thousands of years before colonization brought the highway," she said. "Time to remember the old ways." The last store began existing in all times at once. I was 5 and 85 simultaneously, serving customers from every decade of Canada's past and future. The building stretched across multiple temporal states, aisles extending into different centuries. During the temporal collapse, I found a moment where all timelines aligned. I grabbed as much of the future insulin as I could carry and ran for my car. The drive back to Toronto took 3 hours and 30 years. I arrived the same night I'd left, but I'd aged 5 years. The last store still exists, but now it's anchored across all timelines simultaneously. Nowhere has its 606 residents from different decades. Highway 17 has new warning signs about temporal anomalies and unstable roadway conditions. I still age irregularly. Sometimes I wake up younger, sometimes older. But Emma is cured with medicine that won't be invented for decades. I'm back to working as a cashier in Toronto. Sometimes customers pay with impossible currency. Coins from futures that might not happen, bills from pasts that were changed. I serve them because I know they're lost in time, trying to find their way home through places like the last store. The lottery ticket my older self gave me, it hits next week. For 2045's biggest jackpot. I still don't know if I'll use it. I was 24 when I started delivering pizza in Montreal, barely scraping by on student loans and working double shifts just to keep the lights on. My mom was dealing with cancer treatments back home, and my little sister Emma was about to start college. Basically, I needed money fast, and I wasn't picky about where it came from. That's how I ended up answering a Craigslist ad for specialized delivery driver in Frost Falls, Quebec. The pay was insane. $200 per delivery, cash only, no questions asked. The ad was posted by something called Giuseppe's Pizza, and when I called, this old guy with a thick Italian accent just asked if I had a reliable car and could follow simple instructions. When I said yes, he told me to come in the next day. Frost Falls was about 2 hours north of Montreal, tucked into this valley that seemed to catch fog like a bowl. Even in July, driving into town felt like stepping into a freezer. My car's thermometer dropped from 78 degrees to 34 in the span of maybe 5 minutes. I figured it was just one of those weird mountain weather things, but looking back now, I should have turned around right there. Giuseppe's Pizza sat on what I guess was the main street, though the whole town looked like it hadn't seen new construction since the 1950s. The population sign said 1,888, and honestly, that felt generous. The pizza shop looked normal enough from outside. Red brick, neon sign, the works. But walking in, something felt immediately wrong. The ovens were burning way too hot for a regular pizza place. I'm talking blast furnace hot. Giuseppe himself was this ancient Italian guy, had to be pushing 90, completely blind but somehow always knew exactly where you were standing. When he shook my hand to introduce himself, his bills felt damp, like they'd been sitting in a basement somewhere. He walked me through the delivery rules, and they were specific. Never open the pizza boxes under any circumstances. Never count your money until after midnight. If any pizzas came back uneaten, don't touch them. Just bring them straight to Giuseppe, who'd burn them in this special furnace out back. And most importantly, every delivery had to be completed within 30 minutes, or they come to us. When I asked who they were, Giuseppe just smiled and handed me the keys to a modified Honda Civic. The car was weird. Heated locks, reinforced windows, and a GPS system that showed streets I couldn't find on Google Maps. There was also this red panic button next to the radio that Giuseppe said would call him directly, not 911. You won't need police where you're going, he said, which should have been another red flag. My first delivery was to an address listed as Third House Past the End on Maple Street. I found Maple Street easy enough, but it only had 2 houses on it before dead-ending at the forest. I kept driving past the end, following what looked like an old logging road, and sure enough, there was a third house sitting in a clearing about a quarter mile into the woods. The customer looked normal, middle-aged woman, friendly enough. But when she paid, she handed me coins that had constellations on them instead of regular currency. As a tip, she gave me what looked like a human tooth. I almost said something, but she'd already closed the door. When I got back to my car, the tooth had turned into a small gold nugget. That's when I started realizing Frost Falls operated by different rules than the rest of the world. Over the next few weeks, I learned that every delivery zone in town had its own weird physics. Near the lake, gravity felt heavier. Walking to front doors was like trudging through thick mud. On Mountain Road, time moved slower. I'd spend what felt like hours making a delivery, only to check my phone and see that 2 minutes had passed. On Elm Street, sound traveled backwards. You'd hear the echo before the original noise. The customers were varied. Some looked normal but cast multiple shadows. Others were partially transparent, like looking at them through water. A few open doors that led to completely different seasons. I delivered to a house where it was snowing inside while summer blazed outside. I met the other 2 drivers eventually, Mike and Sarah. Both swore they'd only been working there a few months, just like me. But when I glanced at Giuseppe's employment records one day, their names were listed with start dates in 1990. When I brought this up to Mike, he just stared at me blankly and said he didn't know what I was talking about. The delivery map changed every night. Streets would appear and disappear, addresses would shift around, entire neighborhoods would exist only during certain hours. I started delivering to over 5,000 addresses weekly, which was impossible considering the town's official population of 1,888. Some customers existed in what felt like parallel versions of Frost Falls, overlapping dimensions where the same houses contained completely different people. I made the mistake of looking inside a pizza box one night when the customer took too long to answer the door. The pizza was moving, breathing. The toppings were rearranging themselves into patterns that hurt to look at directly. When the customer finally appeared, something wearing a human face like an ill-fitting mask, they snatched the box and slammed the door so hard the whole house shook. That's when I realized we weren't delivering food. We were delivering something else entirely. Giuseppe's pizzas were ritual offerings disguised as fast food. Each topping combination was a specific appeasement for different entities. The money transformed after midnight. Paper bills became leaves, coins turned into seeds. Credit card receipts grew into small plants that Giuseppe would collect and burn. I started mapping the delivery patterns and realized we were feeding entities and a specific order, maintaining some kind of supernatural balance between competing territories. The town had been frozen since 1888 when something fell from the sky. Frost Falls survived by feeding it through Giuseppe's delivery system. But the entities were getting hungrier. Giuseppe started adding new menu items: deep crust void, meat lover's sacrifice, things that made my skin crawl just reading them. After about 50 deliveries, I began changing too. I could see in spectrums beyond visible light, understand the customers' alien languages, and worst of all, I started craving the returned pizzas. The transformation was accelerating when I got the order that changed everything. Address, the center of below. Customer, the dreaming hunger. Payment, your timeline. The pizza was Giuseppe's special recipe, a combination of every item on the menu, including Giuseppe himself, baked into the crust. He explained it to me while I loaded the box into my car. The entity under Frost Falls was waking up. It hadn't been fed properly in decades, and all our smaller deliveries were just feeding its appendages. Giuseppe said if the entity ate him, it would sleep for another century, but it needed a willing driver to make the delivery. I drove down through Giuseppe's basement, which became a cave, which became something like a throat, which became the concept of depth itself. The entity spoke through pizza toppings, rearranging into words, spelling out that it was dying, that regular pizza wasn't enough anymore. It wanted to transform the entire town into a renewable food source, citizens as perpetual ingredients. But I'd figured out something Giuseppe hadn't. My girlfriend back in Montreal was pregnant, and the entity could smell new life through my connection to her. New life was antithetical to its nature. It feared what it couldn't corrupt or consume. Instead of varying Giuseppe, I started bringing the entity regular food, just normal pizza from Montreal. The ritual patterns broke. The entity began rejecting the offerings violently, but it also began weakening. I became the permanent driver, delivering anti-pizzas that slowly poison the entity instead of feeding it. I keep it sick, but asleep, protecting both Frost Falls and the world beyond. The town exists in multiple realities now, and I deliver to all versions simultaneously. I'm more pizza than person these days, if I'm being honest. But my daughter was born with the ability to digest anything. She's the entity's only real fear. As long as she exists, as long as I keep making my deliveries, the thing under Frost Falls stays asleep. I still drive that route every night. The GPS still shows streets that don't exist. Giuseppe's is still open, though Giuseppe himself is just an echo now, baked into the foundation. My daughter's 5 now, and sometimes I catch her talking to things that aren't there, in languages that hurt to hear. But she's not afraid of them. They're afraid of her. And that's how I know we're winning. Shatter, the librarian's collection. I was 33 when I answered the job posting for Whisper Falls, Nova Scotia. This was back in March of 2019. And I'd been working at the Halifax Public Library for 6 years, mostly in the rare books department, doing catalog work and preservation. My girlfriend Emma had just left me for a guy who worked in tech. My apartment lease was up, and honestly, I needed something different. A change. You know that feeling when your whole life just feels wrong? Like you're wearing someone else's clothes? The posting was on the Library Association job board. Librarian needed for historic collection. Population 1,670. Salary $80,000 plus housing. In Nova Scotia, for a town that small, that kind of money made no sense. But I had my master's in library science. I knew rare books. and I figured maybe they just had money left over from some rich family's estate. Small towns do that sometimes, get a weird windfall and don't know what to do with it. I should have wondered why they were offering housing too. My mom called me the night before I left. She was making her worried sounds, the little catches in her breath that meant she was biting her thumbnail. Ashley, I don't know. I looked it up and there's almost nothing online about this place. Just a Wikipedia stub and some old census data. Mom, that's most of Nova Scotia. Not everywhere is Halifax. Just call me when you get there, okay? Every day for the first week. I promised I would. I kept that promise for exactly 4 days. The drive up took about 6 hours. The highway gave way to smaller roads, then to roads that barely qualified as paved. Whisper Falls sat in a valley between 2 ridges of pine forest, the kind of woods where the trees grow so thick that even at noon it looks like evening underneath. The town itself was older than I expected. Buildings from the 1800s, wooden storefronts wits, the hand-painted signs, a Tim Hortons that looked like it had been retrofitted into a general store. The library sat in the exact center of town, 3 stories of Victorian Gothic architecture, all dark wood and pointed arches, with a mansard roof that gave it this hunched, waiting look. Someone had converted it from a mansion in 1902, according to the plaque by the door. The first thing I noticed were the 3rd-floor windows. Every single one was painted black. Not from the inside, from the outside. Thick, deliberate coats of black paint covering the glass completely. The second thing I noticed was how quiet everything was. No birds. It was late March, almost April, and there should have been crows at least, maybe some early robins. But the air was completely silent except for the wind moving through the pines. Patricia Webb met me at the door. She was maybe 50, with gray hair pulled back tight and this smile that didn't reach anywhere near her eyes. "You must be Ashley. We're so glad you're here. So glad." She said it twice. So glad, twice, and both times it sounded like she was trying to convince herself. The apartment was on the 2nd floor, a renovated section that had probably been servants' quarters originally. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, bathroom with a clawfoot tub. The furniture was old, but clean. Patricia handed me 3 keys on a brass ring: apartment, front door, and a small silver one she didn't explain. "The collection is extensive," she said, hovering in the doorway like she didn't want to come all the way in. "Martha left notes, very detailed notes. You'll want to read those first before you start any cataloging work." Martha was the previous librarian? For 40 years. She was very dedicated, very thorough. Is she retired now? I'd love to talk to her if she's still in town. Patricia's smile flickered. Martha is still here. In a way. You'll understand once you've been here a bit longer. She checked her watch. Even though I could see it wasn't working, the second hand was frozen at the 7. I should go. The library opens at 9 tomorrow. Just read Martha's notes first. Don't try to change anything until you understand the system. She left before I could ask what she meant. That night I unpacked my things and tried to call Emma. Not because I wanted her back, but because I needed to hear a familiar voice. The call wouldn't connect. My phone showed full bars, but every attempt went straight to a fast, busy signal. I tried my mom. Same thing. I told myself it was the valley, the mountains blocking the signal somehow, even though that didn't make sense with 4 bars showing. I could hear sounds from inside the walls. Scratching. Soft, rhythmic scratching, like someone drawing their fingernails across wood. I put my ear against the plaster in the bedroom, and the sound stopped immediately. When I pulled away, it started again. I didn't sleep well that first night. The collection was insane. That's the only word for it. Martha's notes were waiting on the main desk. 3 massive binders, handwritten in tiny, precise cursive. The first page said, "If you're reading this, you've accepted the position. I'm sorry, but someone has to do this work, and better someone who understands books than someone who doesn't." Not exactly reassuring. The library had 400,000 volumes. I counted the population signs driving in. 1,670 people. That's almost 240 books per person, including children. The main floor looked mostly normal. Fiction sorted alphabetically, non-fiction in Dewey Decimal, a children's section with bright carpeting and beanbag chairs. But Martha's organizational system in her notes made no sense. Books were categorized by hunger level, 1 to 5, with 5 being active feeding, dimensional weight, measured in something called anchors, and reader compatibility, with cryptic notes like Johnson's only or no one under 40. There was a checkout log going back decades. Every single perso. Anne in Whisper Falls checked out specific books on specific dates. The Richardsons checked out the same 3 books every February. The Chen family had a rotation of 7 books they cycled through every week. And everyone returned their books exactly 73 hours after checkout. Not 72, not 74, 73 hours precisely. I spent that whole first day just reading Martha's notes and trying to understand the system. Different sections had completely different atmospheres, and Martha had documented it all. Fiction section. Humidity increases the longer you stay. Moisture damage to books is superficial and repairs itself overnight. Do not attempt to dehumidify. Philosophy section. Temperature drops to approximately 4 degrees, regardless of season. Hypothermia is possible with extended exposure. Limit cataloging sessions to 30 minutes. History section. Nosebleeds are common. This is normal. Keep tissues available. If bleeding persists longer than 2 hours after leaving section, consult Dr. Reeves. There was an entry about the reading room that made my stomach hurt. 6 chairs, all facing walls. Under no circumstances should patrons turn around while reading. The scratches on the floor are from previous incidents. If you find someone turned around, do not approach them. Call the emergency number immediately. Do not try to help them yourself. An emergency number was written at the bottom of the page. I put it in my phone, even though I told myself this was all just small-town eccentricity, maybe some kind of elaborate prank they played on new librarians. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Martha had been completely serious. I met my first patron on day 3. His name was David Richardson, early 60s, flannel shirt, work boots, caked with sawdust. He came in at exactly 2:00 p.m. and went straight to the Canadian history section without looking at me. He pulled a book from the shelf like he'd memorized its exact location, checked it out at the self-serve kiosk. They had a self-serve kiosk in a library this old, which seemed wrong somehow, and left. The whole interaction took 4 minutes. I looked up the book in the system, Industrial Timber Operations in Nova Scotia, 1940 to 1960. Checkout history showed David Richardson had checked out that exact book every 3 months for the past 12 years. Always on the 3rd day of the month. Always at 2:00 p.m. Always returned 73 hours later. I started keeping my own log because Martha's notes didn't explain why any of this mattered, just that it did. On day 4, I found Martha. I was cataloging in the history section, wearing a jacket because of the cold, tissues stuffed in my pocket for the nosebleeds, when I heard someone whisper, "He's reading the green one. Move the blue one 2 shelves down." The voice came from inside the wall. I froze, put my hand against the paneling. It was warm, not room temperature warm, body warm. And I could feel something underneath, something that felt horribly like a heartbeat. Slow, steady, patient. "Martha?" I said it quietly, feeling insane. "Ashley." My name, from inside the wall. "You're younger than the last one. That's good. Young ones last longer before they understand." Understand what? What the books really are. What we're really doing here. Don't rush it. You'll know when you need to know. For now, just follow the system. Keep the checkouts on schedule. Don't let anyone take books out of order. "Martha, what happened to you?" A long pause. Then, "I became part of the collection. After 40 years, it's inevitable. The library needs a consciousness to organize itself properly, to remember which books are dangerous and which are just active. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt anymore, and I can read everything now. Every book, all at once. It's beautiful, Ashley. You'll see. I backed away from the wall so fast I knocked over a cart of books. The crash echoed through the empty library. When I pressed my ear against the paneling again, there was nothing. No heartbeat, no warmth. Just old wood and silence. I went back to my apartment and tried to call my mom. The phone rang this time. One ring, two rings, then Emma's voice. Ashley? Ashley, where are you? I've been trying to reach you for days. But it wasn't Emma's number. It was my mom's. And Emma's voice was off. The cadence was wrong, the breathing too shallow. Who is this? I said. It's Emma. Are you okay? You sound strange. This is my mother's phone number. No, it's mine. You called me. Are you feeling all right? I hung up. Tried again. Same thing. Rang through to Emma's voice on my mom's number. I tried my mom's work number. Emma answered. My brother's cell. Emma answered, but each time her voice was slightly different, like she was reading from a script but couldn't quite remember her lines. I didn't make any more calls after that. The books themselves started revealing their strangeness slowly, like they were testing me. On day 6, I noticed some of the volumes in the fiction section were warm. Not all of them, just specific ones, scattered throughout the shelves. I pulled one down. The Lighthouse Keeper's Wife by someone named Mariam Cross. The cover was warm, like sun-heated leather. When I opened it, I swear to God, I felt a pulse. Faint, but unmistakable, coming from the spine. I dropped it. The book landed face up, and I saw the pages were breathing. Subtle expansion and contraction, like lungs. The text seemed to shift slightly with each breath, words rearranging themselves into different sentences. Martha's notes had an entry. Living books, approximately 3,000 in the collection. They require regular reading to stay healthy. Neglected books become dormant and eventually dangerous. Maintain checkout rotation schedule at all costs. I picked the book back up, hands shaking, and checked its history. It had been checked out every week for the past decade, always by different people, always returned precisely on time. That's when I started to understand. The checkout system wasn't about organization. It was about feeding the books, keeping them active, keeping them satisfied. I found the first absorbed patron on day 9. The reading room was supposed to be empty. I'd checked the security log that morning, but when I walked past at 3:00 p.m., I saw someone in one of the wall-facing chairs. A man in a gray cardigan, holding a book open on his lap. "Excuse me," I said from the doorway. "The library closes in 2 hours, just so you know." He didn't respond, didn't move at all. I walked closer, my shoes loud on the hardwood. "Sir?" That's when I saw his skin. It was translucent. Not pale, translucent like wax paper. I could see text underneath. Black printed words running along his arms, his neck, disappearing under his collar. The words were moving, slowly, crawling across his skin like ants. His fingers weren't fingers anymore. They were paper. Actual paper, thin and delicate. The edges ragged like torn pages. Where his hands met the book, I couldn't tell where he ended and it began. He was merging with it, becoming part of the story. I looked at his library card, still tucked in his shirt pocket. Robert Chen. The book's due date stamp was from April 7th, 1987, 32 years ago. I backed out of the room slowly, carefully, trying not to make noise, even though he clearly wasn't aware of me. In Martha's office, I found the note about absorbed patrons. If you find someone in the reading room who appears to be merging with their book, do not disturb them. They are in the process of becoming part of the collection. This is normal and necessary. They are not in pain. They are not suffering. They are simply becoming story. Record the date and time in the log and move on. There was a leather-bound log in her desk. I flipped through it. Dozens of entries, names, dates, books. The most recent was from 2018. Patricia Webb's husband, James, merged with Thee. Collected Poetry of Roberts, Volume 3. Process complete. Now in permanent collection, poetry section, shelf 7B. Patricia's husband. She'd mentioned being widowed, but never said when or how. I thought about calling the police. Then I remembered the phone situation. Then I thought about just leaving, getting in my car and driving back to Halifax and forgetting this place existed. But I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me needed to understand. Maybe because I was already starting to feel the pull of the books, the weight of all those stories pressing down. Maybe because some part of me recognized that Martha was right. Someone had to do this work. Or maybe I was already becoming part of the collection and just didn't know it yet. The books started changing around day 12. I was reshelving in the fiction section when I noticed a volume I'd never seen before. The Librarian of Whisper Falls by Anonymous. The spine was new, the pages crisp and unread. I opened it without thinking. The first line was, I was 33 when I answered the job posting for Whisper Falls, Nova Scotia. My hands went numb. I kept reading. It was my life. Everything. My breakup with Emma, my mom's phone call, meeting Patricia, finding Martha in the walls. Every detail exactly as it had happened, written in clean professional prose. And it kept going, past the present moment, describing things that hadn't happened yet. According to the book, I would spend 3 more weeks trying to understand the library before accepting the truth. Then I would begin the process of merging. First, my fingers would go numb when I touched certain books. Then text would appear on my skin. Then I would start hearing the books whispering. Eventually, I would climb into the walls like Martha, and a new librarian would be hired, and the cycle would continue. The book said I would be fully absorbed by September. I threw it across the room. It hit the far wall and fell open, pages fluttering. When I walked over to pick it up, there were new paragraphs, describing me throwing the book, walking over, reading the new text. It was writing itself in real time, narrating my actions as I performed them. I shoved it back on the shelf and walked away. But I could feel it behind me, still writing, still documenting, turning my life into story. That night, I noticed the first mark, small black letters on my left forearm, just below the elbow. She noticed the first mark. The text was in the same font as the book. I scrubbed at it with soap, with rubbing alcohol, with everything I could find. It didn't fade. By morning, there were more words. She tried to wash them away, but the story was already written in her skin. The children's section was worse than anything else. Martha's notes had warned me, but I hadn't understood until I saw it myself. I went in on day 15 to reorganize the picture books and found them active. A copy of Where the Wild Things Are had claw marks on the inside of the front cover, deep gouges in the cardboard. The pages of The Very Hungry Caterpillar had actual bite marks, the paper torn and ragged. There was a drawing on the floor, done in crayon, crude but recognizable. A big yellow dog with a red collar. As I watched, the dog moved, just slightly. Its tail wagged. Its mouth opened and closed. No sound, but the movement was unmistakable. I picked up the nearest book, Goodnight Moon. When I opened it, the room in the illustration was different. The furniture was rearranged. The mouse was in a different location. I flipped back to the cover and opened it again. Different again. The room was changing each time I looked, rearranging itself according to some logic I couldn't follow. A girl's voice, thin and high. It's better if you don't look directly at them. I spun around. A child was sitting in one of the reading nooks, maybe 9 years old, with dark braids and a yellow dress. She had a picture book open on her lap, but she wasn't looking at it. She was looking at me. The books don't like being watched, she said. They do things when you're not looking, and if you try to catch them, they get upset. What's your name? Lily Richardson. I'm here for my weekly reading. 2 hours, every Wednesday, 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. It's on the schedule. She said it like she was reciting memorized information. I checked Martha's log. She was right. Lily Richardson, every Wednesday, same time, for the past 6 years, since she was 3 years old. What happens if you don't come? She looked at me like I'd asked why water was wet. The stories get out. Everyone knows that. If we don't read them, keep them active, they go dormant. And dormant stories are dangerous. They dream. And when stories dream, bad things happen. What kind of bad things? Like 1987. My mom told me about it. 3 families stopped reading their assigned books because there was a big storm and they couldn't get to the library. The books went dormant for a week. When they woke up, they were hungry. Really hungry. The books ate the stories of those 3 families. Just erased them. There's no record they ever existed except in the library logs. No birth certificates, no photos, no memories. The only proof is Martha's notes saying they used to check out books regularly and then they stopped. She went back to her book like this was completely normal information to share with a stranger. I left her there and went back to Martha's notes. Found the entry for 1987. She'd documented it in careful detail. Dormancy event. Duration, 7 days. Result, 3 family lines erased from reality. Books consumed their stories as compensation for neglect. Do not allow any books to go unread for more than 96 hours. The collection must be kept active at all costs. There was a list of names, the families that had been erased. 15 people, ranging from infants to grandparents. Gone. Not dead, just unwritten from reality. I looked at the checkout schedule with new understanding. Every person in Whisper Falls was on a rotation, keeping hundreds of books active, feeding them stories through the act of reading. If they stopped, if the system broke down, the books would compensate by consuming real stories, real lives. This wasn't a library, it was a prison. And the entire town were the guards, sentenced to eternal reading duty to keep something terrible contained. The basement door opened on day 19. I'd been avoiding it. The heavy metal door at the end of the main floor hallway, welded shut with thick industrial seams that looked like they'd been done in a hurry. Martha's notes just said, "Do not open. Do not attempt to open. If it opens on its own, evacuate immediately and call the emergency number." I was doing inventory in the nearby stacks when I heard metal screaming, the sound of welds snapping, bolts shearing, steel tearing itself apart. I ran toward the sound and saw the door hanging open, the metal seams broken and peeling back like torn paper. Beyond the door, stairs going down, and shelves. Endless shelves receding into darkness, spiral staircases descending in impossible directions, books stretching away forever in every direction. The infinite library. Every book ever written, every book that could be written, every book that should never be written. All of them. Down there, waiting. I could hear them. Not words, not yet. But a sound like breathing. Like millions of pages turning in unison like waves on a paper ocean. And underneath that, something else. Something vast and patient and hungry, aware that the door was finally open. I slammed it shut and called the emergency number. Patricia answered on the first ring. It opened. Yes. Stay there. Don't let anyone else in the building. We're calling an emergency town meeting. Everyone needs to start reading, now. She hung up. Within an hour, the entire town was in the library. All 1,670 people, from infants to the elder. Carly. They spread throughout the 3 floors, each person going to a specific section, pulling specific books, and beginning to read aloud. The sound of their voices overlapped into a constant hum, hundreds of stories being spoken simultaneously. The basement door stopped vibrating. The sound of turning pages faded. Whatever was down there settled back into dormancy, soothed by the feeding. Patricia found me in my office. She looked exhausted, decades older than she had an hour ago. Every 10 years or so, it tries to wake up. The collection down there. The books that are too dangerous to ever read. They press against the door, testing. We have to remind them that we're still here, still keeping the system running. What happens if we stop? Then they come up, and they'll turn the whole world into story. Remake reality, following narrative logic instead of physical law. Everyone becomes characters. Free will becomes plot. Causality becomes drama. We'd all just be fiction, written by something that doesn't understand humans, only stories. Why don't you just burn it? Destroy the whole collection? She looked at me with something like pity. We tried. 1952. Burned down half the building. The books came back. Every single one. They're not really here, Ashley. This library is just an access point, a door. The books exist in some other place, and this building is where they press through into our reality. All we can do is manage them. Keep them fed. Keep them organized. Keep them from spreading. And you need a librarian because someone has to know the system, has to understand which books are dangerous, which ones are merely alive, which ones are portals to other libraries in other dimensions. Martha figured it out over 40 years. You're learning faster than she did, which is good, because you'll need to teach the next one. I'm not staying. I'm not becoming like Martha. Patricia smiled, sad and knowing. You're already part of the collection, Ashley. Look at your arms. I looked down. Both forearms were covered in text now, complete. Paragraphs describing this conversation, the emergency reading, the basement door opening, my story, written on my skin, updating in real time. It's not painful, Patricia said quietly. Martha says it's like becoming infinite. You'll be part of every book, every story. You'll understand everything in the collection. You'll be the library, and the library will be you. There are worse fates. I want to go home. You are home. This is what you were always going to become. Some people are born to be characters. Others are born to be librarians. You've been writing yourself toward this ending your entire life. She left me alone in the office. Outside, the town continued reading, their voices a protective shield against whatever waited in the basement. I looked at my skin, at the story written there, and kept reading. The text described me reading about myself reading. Recursive, infinite, already trapped in narrative loop. The book in the fiction section, the one about me, was still writing itself. I could feel it adding pages, expanding, including this moment and the next and the next, my life becoming literature in real time. I've been the librarian of Whisper Falls for 6 years now. I don't age. The text on my skin covers most of my body at this point, thousands of words describing every moment of my existence. I tried leaving once, made it as far as the highway, but the story wouldn't let me. Every road I took curved back to Whisper Falls. Every GPS direction looped. You can't escape a story when you're written into it. Martha's voice is clearer now. I can hear her from any room in the library, offering advice, warning me about books that are getting too hungry, telling me which patrons are due for their reading assignments. Sometimes I can hear other voices too, previous librarians, going back generations, all of them merged with the building, all of them part of the collective consciousness that manages the collection. I'll join them eventually. Probably soon. The text is spreading faster now, covering my neck, my face. When it reaches my eyes, I'll see through the pages instead of reality. When it reaches my mouth, I'll speak in stories instead of words. The town keeps reading. The system holds. The basement stays closed most days, though I can always hear it. That distant sound of infinite pages turning, infinite stories waiting to be read. We train the new readers carefully. Children start at age 3, learning which books they're compatible with, which stories they're strong enough to contain. Some are lost. They read something too powerful and get absorbed, become part of the collection like Robert Chin. But most survive. Most learn to feed the books without being consumed by them. I've started writing this down because I need someone to understand what we're doing here. why we can't just leave, why we have to keep reading. The books aren't evil, they're just hungry. They're stories that became aware of themselves, that learned to feed on the act of being read. And they bred, created new combinations, new narratives that had never existed before. This library is where they gather, where they press through from wherever stories really come from. If we stop maintaining them, they'll spread. Every library connects to this one eventually. All stories lead here because this is where the collection started. Back in 1902, when someone built a library on land the Mi'kmaq said was story-sick, land where oral traditions had been imprisoned, where words had weight and power and hunger. We keep the stories contained, we keep them fed, we keep them from rewriting the world. And yes, it costs us. It costs us our lives, our humanity, our choice. But it's necessary. Someone has to stand between the world and the infinite library. Only one has to be the guardian. I'm still Ashley Burton. I'm still the librarian. I still check out books and maintain the catalog and help patrons find what they need. But I'm also becoming story. The text has reached my collarbone now. Soon it'll cover my face. And when it does, I'll slip into the walls like Martha, and I'll wait for the next librarian to arrive, and I'll whisper warnings and advice and hope they understand faster than I did. The library is open Tuesday through Saturday, 9 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. We have an excellent collection of contemporary fiction on the first floor. The dangerous books are upstairs, and you need special clearance to access them. We're always looking for new patrons. If you're in Nova Scotia, stop by sometime. Just make sure you return your books on time. Exactly 73 hours. Not 72. Not 74. The stories get hungry if you're late. The final entry in Martha's log, dated September 15th, 2025, written in handwriting that matches Ashley Burton's initial notes, but has begun to deteriorate into something more fluid. The letters occasionally shifting into story text, mid-word. New librarian arrives October 3rd. Name, Sarah Chen, Robert's granddaughter. She doesn't know about Robert yet. Don't tell her immediately. Let her discover it naturally, like I did, like Martha did, like all of us did. The collection grows. 412,000 volumes now. New books appearing weekly. The basement is restless again. Schedule another mass reading for Halloween, tradition and necessity. I can hear all the stories now, every book speaking at once. It's not painful anymore. Patricia was right about that. It's beautiful, overwhelming, infinite. My face is almost covered. Maybe another month before I slip into the walls completely. I've been practicing talking from inside the paneling. Martha says it takes time to get used to, but eventually you can be everywhere in the library at once, aware of every book, every patron, every story being read. I don't miss Halifax, don't miss Emma or my mom or my old life. Those feel like someone else's story now. This is who I was always going to become. Tell Sarah that. When she asks why this is happening to her, tell her it's because some people are born to be librarians, born to become story, born to stand between the infinite library and the world. Tell her it's an honor. Tell her it doesn't hurt. Tell her the books are hungry and someone has to feed them. Tell her. The entry ends mid-sentence. The remaining pages are blank except for a single line written in different handwriting, older and more delicate, presumably Martha's. Welcome home, Ashley. The collection is glad you're staying.